The first time I saw him, I knew trouble had walked right into my room. Not the kind of trouble that gets you court-martialed. The kind that makes your chest ache and your thoughts spin long after lights out. I was barely 2 weeks into basic at Fort Hays, still figuring out how to fold my uniforms to regulation and survive 5 a.m. drills, when Sergeant Harris announced I'd be getting a new dorm mate. Most guys around here kept to themselves, at least that was my plan. Until he stepped in. Logan Carter. Alpha. Army golden boy. He carried himself like the whole damn world couldn't touch him. Muscles sculpted from years of training. Jaw sharp enough to cut glass. And those eyes, God help me. Those storm gray eyes looked like they could strip me bare without laying a hand on me. I'm not stupid. An Omega like me doesn't get involved with an Alpha like him. The rules are clear, and in the military, they're unspoken but ironclad. No attachments, no claims, no distractions. Yet within 24 hours, Logan had found a way to make himself impossible to ignore. It started with the badge. A small, circular piece of polished metal standard issue for marking battle buddy status during joint exercises. It's supposed to be nothing more than a symbol of trust. But the way he pressed it against my chest, the way his fingers lingered over my heart, it felt like something else entirely. "You'll wear it," he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear over the chatter in the mess hall. I blinked. "It's not mandatory." He smirked, leaning just close enough for me to smell the faint trace of cedar and gun oil. "Maybe not for everyone." From then on, he made a habit of it. Every morning before inspection, Logan would check to make sure I had the badge pinned just right. If I didn't, he'd fix it himself slowly, deliberately, brushing against me like he had every right. And I hated how my pulse jumped every damn time. The others noticed. Whispers followed us through the barracks. Some of the guys teased me, calling me Carter's shadow. A few looked at me like I was breaking some unspoken code. But Logan never flinched, never explained, never let me walk anywhere without that badge shining on my chest. It wasn't just about the badge, though. It was the way he'd step into my space when I was tying my boots. The way he'd grab the seat next to me in the mess hall, his thigh brushing mine under the table. The way he'd slow his pace during runs so I wouldn't fall behind. One night, after a grueling 12-hour field drill, I stumbled back into the dorm, sore and bone-tired. He was sitting on his bunk, shirtless, running a towel through his hair. Drops of water slid down his neck, disappearing beneath the waistband of his shorts. "You're late," he said, like I owed him an explanation. "We had extra laps," I muttered, dropping onto my bed. He didn't reply, just got up, crossed the room, and before I knew it, he was kneeling in front of me, untying my mud-caked boots. "Logan, relax." His voice was soft, but there was a steel edge to it. "You look like you're about to collapse." I sat frozen as he worked, his fingers steady and warm against my ankles. No one in this place touched like that, gentle, almost protective. It made my chest ache in a way I couldn't name. When he finished, he glanced up at me, and for a second, the air between us went still. "You should take better care of yourself, Omega," he murmured. The word rolled off his tongue like a secret, not a slur. I should have been angry. No Alpha had the right to address me that way without my permission. But instead, something deep inside me stirred. Something I'd been trying to bury since the day I enlisted. Over the next weeks, the tension only grew. We trained side by side, ate side by side, slept less than 10 feet apart. Every moment was a test. He'd brush past me in the hallway, his hand at the small of my back like he was claiming me. In the middle of a night watch, he'd pass me a cup of coffee without a word, our fingers lingering just long enough to send sparks up my arm. Then came the night of the storm. Thunder shook the windows, rain hammering the tin roof of the dorm. Power flickered once, then went out completely, plunging the room into darkness. I was lying awake, staring at the ceiling, when I heard his voice. "Ellie." I turned toward the sound. "Yeah." A shadow moved closer. Then he was sitting on the edge of my bed, his knee brushing mine. I could just make out the outline of his face in the lightning flashes. "You're shaking," he said. "It's cold." He didn't argue, just shifted, pulling the blanket up over both of us. My body went rigid as he lay down beside me, close enough that I could feel his breath on my skin. "Logan, just sleep," he murmured. "I'll keep watch." But I couldn't sleep. Not with him there. Not with the way my heart was pounding like it wanted out of my chest. Somewhere in the dark, his hand found mine under the blanket. Not gripping, not demanding, just there. A silent promise. And that's when I realized the badge wasn't about rules. It wasn't about battle buddies. It was about him quietly, stubbornly, marking me as his long before I was ready to admit I wanted to be. The storm passed sometime before dawn, but Logan didn't move from my bed. When I woke, the first thing I felt was the warmth of his arm still draped loosely over my waist. The second was the weight of the badge against my chest, as if it had been there all night. He stirred when I shifted. His eyes opened soft, almost sleepy, and for a moment I saw something unguarded there. Something he didn't show anyone else. "Morning," he said quietly. I sat up, trying to put space between us, my mind still tangled in the memory of his hand in mine. "You should get back to your bunk before someone sees." "They already see." His voice was calm, almost amused. "They've seen for weeks." I didn't know what to say to that. Training got more intense as the weeks rolled on. Our unit was prepping for a major joint exercise in Colorado, and every day felt like a grindstone. I told myself the physical exhaustion would wear down whatever dangerous thing was growing between us. But it didn't. It only sharpened it. It happened during a night navigation drill. We were paired up, of course. The terrain was rough, uneven ridges, thick brush, no moonlight. Somewhere along the way, I tripped hard, twisting my ankle. "Eli!" Logan was at my side in seconds, his hands steadying me before I could even hit the ground. "I'm fine," I lied, biting back the pain. He didn't believe me for a second. "You can't walk on that." He crouched, turning his back to me. "Get on." "What?"
No.
"Now." His tone brooked no argument. I hesitated only a moment before climbing on. His shoulders were solid beneath my hands, his stride sure and relentless as he carried me through the dark. Every step jolted my injured ankle, but the steady rhythm of his breathing against my ear kept me anchored. "You always do this," I muttered. "Do what?" "Act like you're responsible for me." There was a pause. Then his voice dropped low. "Maybe I am." Something in my chest twisted, and I had no answer. By the time we got back to base, my ankle was swelling. The medic cleared me for light duty, which meant extra hours stuck in the dorm while everyone else trained. I hated it until I realized Logan was skipping meals to bring food back for me. One evening, he came in with 2 trays, setting one on my desk. "You're gonna get yourself in trouble," I told him. "Worth it," he said simply, and sat across from me. We ate in silence for a while, but I could feel him watching me. Finally, I set my fork down. "Why are you doing this?" His gaze didn't waver. "Because I don't want anyone else to." The words hit harder than I expected. There was no teasing in his tone, no smug grin, just quiet certainty, like he'd already made his choice. The badge became more than a morning ritual. It was a constant during drills, during meals, even pinned to my PT shirt during runs. Once, when I forgot it on my bunk, he noticed within minutes. "You're missing something," he said, holding it out. I reached for it, but he shook his head. "Let me." He stepped close, so close I could feel the heat radiating off him. His fingers brushed my chest as he fastened the pin, lingering just a heartbeat too long. My breath caught, and I hated how much I didn't want him to move away. The breaking point came the night before the Colorado exercise. The barracks were quieter than usual, tension hanging in the air. I was lying on my bunk, staring at the ceiling, when Logan spoke from across the room. "You ever think about what happens after all this?" I turned my head. "After what?" "The army. Training. This dorm." His voice was unreadable. "Us." My heart thudded painfully. "There is no us, Logan. You know that." He stood, crossing the room in 2 strides, and before I could move, he was sitting on the edge of my bed. "Say that again," he challenged. I forced myself to meet his eyes. There's no us. He leaned in, close enough that his breath ghosted across my lips. You've been wearing my mark for 2 months, Eli. You think that means nothing? It's a badge, Logan. It's regulation. It's mine. He cut in, his voice fierce and low. And so are you, whether you're ready to admit it or not. The air between us felt charged, every nerve in my body screaming. I wanted to shove him away. I wanted to pull him closer. Instead, I whispered, "You can't say that." His jaw clenched, but he didn't push further. He stood and walked back to his bunk without another word, leaving me shaking in the quiet. Colorado changed everything. The exercise was grueling 3 days in freezing temperatures, hauling gear through snow and ice. On the second night, our squad got separated in a wideout. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. I could hear voices shouting, but they were swallowed by the wind. I kept moving until my legs gave out, collapsing into the snow. That's when I felt strong hands hauling me up. "Got you?" Logan's voice rasped in my ear. His face was pale, eyes narrowed against the wind, but his grip was unyielding. "Where's the rest? Forget them. I'm not losing you." He dragged me through the storm, half carrying me until we found shelter in a shallow rock outcrop. My hands were numb, my teeth chattering so hard I couldn't speak. Without hesitation, he pulled me into his arms, wrapping his body around mine. "Stay awake," he ordered. "Talk to me." I tried, but all that came out was a whisper. "Why do you care this much?" He didn't answer right away. Then, so quiet I almost missed it. "Because somewhere along the way, you stopped being just my battle buddy." When the storm cleared and we rejoined the squad, no one asked why we'd been gone so long. But something between us had shifted, like the line I'd been holding all this time had finally snapped. Back at base, he didn't wait. The moment we were alone in the dorm, he closed the door and faced me. "I'm done pretending this is just about a badge," he said. I swallowed hard. "Logan, I don't care what the rules say. I don't care what anyone thinks. You're mine, Eli. And I think I've been yours since the day I walked in here." The fight went out of me all at once. Weeks of denial, of pushing him away, of trying to convince myself I didn't want T-Sit all crumbled. I stepped toward him. Just one step. It was enough. His hands came up to cradle my face, and then his mouth was on mine, warm, insistent, tasting like every moment we'd been holding back. The kiss wasn't gentle. It was claiming. But underneath the heat, there was something softer. Something I'd been too afraid to name until now. When we finally broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. "Keep the badge," he murmured. I managed a shaky smile. "Like you'd let me take it off." Weeks later, we were still careful in public, but in the quiet moments, there was no need to hide. Sometimes, when no one was looking, he'd adjust the badge on my chest and give me that small, knowing smile. It wasn't about rules anymore. It wasn't even about the badge. It was about him and me and the quiet, stubborn way we'd found each other in a place built to strip people down. And for the first time since I enlisted, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.